Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Torah with your host, Rabbi Anibal. Streaming live from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. And I apologize if you were in a different page and you saw that the Torah wasn't there. I had a little problem here streaming, and yeah, I couldn't connect. I was starting the event, and I got a message saying the event has finished. What am I not finished? I just started. So something happened with the streaming key, and I had to create an alternative, which is the system we use for Daily Minyan. And I know some of you you will probably find the class as we go. But yeah, not cool. We pay a lot of money for this system, and not happy when it fails on their end. Anyway, welcome everyone. Welcome Brenda and David Grossman from Plano, Texas. What do you say here? He said, we are eyes in here in Plano. Very unusual for us. Okay. Eyes to meet you. Yes, eyes here too. Except here is usual. It's usual. Donna is here. I know, Donna, you had problem connecting. It's not your fault. Not your fault. Shelly Chachino finally found us. Welcome, Shelly. Welcome to the class. So today we are going to study about Tu Bishvat in preparation for Tu Bishvat. That's the thing. Today is the 11th day of Shevat, right? Yeah, 11th day of Shevat. And Tu Bishvat is the 15th, which is going to be on Monday, Sunday evening. Right, if you follow the Jewish calendar, Sunday evening. Oh, I know many people can find us. I can tell. I can tell because of the numbers. Sorry about that. Anyway, Holly Mandelkern found us. Welcome, Holly. Welcome to the class. Let's say we're going to study a little bit about Tu Bishvat. What I wanted to study with you a little bit is, at least at the beginning of the class, let's see if we can go past that, is to talk a little bit about the Seder of Tu Bishvat, which is something that many times people are not familiar, or they hear about it, but they don't know why we do it, right? So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. What is all about the Seder of Tu Bishvat, why we do it, okay? It has lots of very deep meanings, and it's a beautiful thing to do. It's Kabbalistic in origin. And yeah, we are going to do one at Shari Zedek. Well, not at the Shari Zedek, but Shari Zedek is going to be part of that. It's going to be a partnership with Temple Shalom and the JNF this Sunday evening. And unfortunately sold out, and I know some of you ask me, why don't you guys stream it? Look, even if we want to stream that one, we wouldn't be able to, because it's in a place called the Garden of Contemplation and the Museum of Human Rights. And there is so much echo there that we don't even know how we are going to function live, in person, with all the echo and amplification. So there is no way to stream it. It's not that. And I know people who don't live in Winnipeg or cannot or don't feel comfortable coming in person. It's not that you're not welcomed. It's that it's impossible for us to stream that one. So sorry about that as well. Okay. But chances are that you may be able to find another one going online. Lots of places I heard are going to have some kind of Seder for Tu Bishvat. And I wanted to talk about this in this class, because if you want to join a Seder for Tu Bishvat, or you may want to do one yourself at home, there are multiple sources online that you can download to do it. You're going to need lots of things in preparation. It's not as complex as the Passover Seder, right? Where you go crazy for a month in advance. This one is just that you have to go to the supermarket and provide and to buy a few elements, right? Like fruits and and things. You will see. I'm going to give you a shopping list if you want to do that. Okay, so let's start with the class. Silvana Soto Trapalison, Nicole Cortez Soto, welcome to the class. Welcome, shalom. We're going to start with talking about the Seder of Tu Bishvat, okay? Here it is. Now, even though we call it a Seder, because, okay, why we call it a Seder? Seder is everything that has an order. That's what Seder means. So if I create a special order for a meal that has some kind of religious content, so I can call that a Seder, because we follow step 1, step 2, step 3. That's what is called a Seder. But technically, more than a Seder, like the Passover Seder, this ritual of Tu Bishvat is more like a tikkun, something that we do on Shavuot, when we stay all night studying Torah to repair the sin that, according to the rabbis, the Israelites committed by falling asleep instead of going to receive the Torah. So we stay up all night. On Tu Bishvat is also a tikkun, a correction. A correction of what? Well, this is a correction of ourselves, or certain aspects of ourselves. Okay? Shelly Chochin, question, would a Shabbat dinner qualify as a certain? No. Because we don't have a specific order except for a few blessings at the beginning and then dig in. The Seder for Tu Bishvat, like the Seder for Passover, has lots and lots of steps that we all follow. And we have the leader said something, the guest then read all together, and there are different things that we show, we eat, we pass around. It's a Seder, it has an order, okay? But again, let's try to understand how this started. So it's coming from the 16th century. What happened? In the 16th century, the Kabbalists of Safed, so you can imagine where Safed is. It's a city in the northern district of Israel, okay? Compiled a Tu Bishvat Seder, somewhat similar to the Seder for Passover. Somewhat similar. It involves enjoying the fruits of the tree, particularly those native to the land of Israel, and discusses philosophical and Kabbalistic concepts associated with the day. Among other things, the Seder is a great way to appreciate the abundance that we so often take for granted, and to develop a good and generous eye for the world around us. So the very first Seder for Tu Bishvat was a pamphlet called Pri Etz Hadar. Pri Etz Hadar, which means the fruit of a beautiful tree. If you may remember that concept, Pri Etz Hadar, for Sukkot, because Pri Etz Hadar is the description of the etrog. The Torah doesn't say that we have to eat an etrog, for a citron, for Sukkot. All it says is Pri Etz Hadar, and then the rabbis in the Talmud discuss that Pri Etz Hadar means an etrog. But basically it means the fruit of a beautiful tree. Okay? That was the very first thing. And this in the 16th century. This is coming from a time where the Kabbalists started to develop some kind of novelties to the liturgy, to the prayers. One of the things that comes from around that time was, for example, the Kabbalat Shabbat, the introduction to the evening service on Friday night, right? That we sing a few chapters of the book of Psalms, we sing the Lecha Dodi, so forth. That wasn't part of the liturgy, but it was added by the Kabbalists around that time. It was a little bit early, okay? And then that almost started an era of innovation, adding Kabbalistic things to the prayer. So this was the Pri Etz Hadar. Now, the Pri Etz Hadar itself, the way we know it, the first edition, was compiled, according to the rabbis, by the Arizal, a very famous Kabbalist from Safed. But it was very controversial because it looks like the very first one who introduced the concept of the Tu Bishvat Seder was the Shabtai Tzvi, who was a Kabbalist, but he ended up being a false messiah within Judaism. So it's interesting that nevertheless the rabbis accepted something that it came from that tradition, but and that's why, for example, it took many centuries for the Ashkenazi Jews to accept the Tu B'Shvat Seder. I will say that Ashkenazim started to accept the Tu B'Shvat Seder mostly in Israel when after the creation of the modern state of Israel, when Ashkenazi and Sephardic communities started to interact with each other. Before, you see, we are so detached from that we don't realize it, that before the creation of the modern state of Israel, there was virtually no interaction between Sephardic and Ashkenazi communities. Their traditions were very different without real chances for interaction and learning from each other. No internet, no streamings, no TV shows. So how can you know what Jews from other countries will do? Eventually you may have a traveler here and there, but as a everyday thing, it didn't happen. But when you have in Israel Ashkenazi and Sephardic opening different congregations with different tradition, but every day they can see and experience what the practices of each other, things like this started to happen, where the Ashkenazi world accepted or started to incorporate with some, sometimes with some modifications, the Tu B'Shvat Seder, that it was something mostly Sephardic. Okay, just remember that. Tu B'Shvat Seder at the beginning was mostly Sephardic. Now, if you come to our event on Sunday evening at the Museum of Human Rights, you would say, well, but maybe I participated in a different Tu B'Shvat Seder and this one is different. That's fine, because this is not halakha. This is not Jewish law. This is tradition, and there are many different versions of the Seder. What they all have in common is that we try different fruits. That's pretty much the common denominator. Okay? So, with that in mind, let me tell you what you need to get if you ever want to celebrate the Seder. Of course, you need a guide. You have to either create one or download one, okay? That's number one. You can get a very good one if you go to Sefaria. If you don't know what Sefaria is, Google it. It's a great resources of Jewish text. And there is a free one that you can download there to analyze. It's a long one. The one we are doing on Sunday is way shorter. Okay, but you need this. Number one, lots of fruits. Lots of fruits, including the 7 species by which the land of Israel is praised, which are figs, dates, pomegranates, olives, grapes, or raisins, right? This is still grape. Wheat, number 6, and barley, number 7. And those two, wheat or barley, could be consumed in the form of bread, cake, cereal, crackers, you name it. Okay? Of course, you cannot eat wheat in the pure form. It has to be processed. Same with barley. And I would say barley sometimes is even more so. Okay, what else you need? You're going to need various nuts with the shells. Very important that they have a shell, that it will stop you from eating the content, the interior. So like walnuts, almonds, pistachios, and coconut. And fruits with peels, like oranges, pomegranates, and avocado. And these are also things that usually you peel it, you discard the peel, and you eat the interior, okay? Then you have other fruits with edible seeds, like blueberries, and other fruits with inedible pits, like peaches or plums. You see, it's interesting because you can eat the peel, but not what is the big seed, the pit inside. So, and then you need wine or grape juice, but, and this makes it very different from the Passover Seder. You're going to need both red and white. Okay? And tzedakah, charity box, because that's what we do all the time when we have a celebration. We always forget the ones who need help. So in this context, it becomes an act of chesed, an act of kindness, that we also give tzedakah when we do this. Okay, any questions so far? Any questions? And please don't ask me where to get those things, because I have no clue. Right? Somebody would say to me, where can I get pomegranates in February in Winnipeg? I don't know. I have no clue. Or figs. I don't know. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just telling you what you're supposed to get. So if you cannot get all the list, at least you have to know that you need something with a shell, something with a pit, right? And something with edible seeds, right? And stuff like that. Stuff like that. So you have all the combinations. Because that's what you're going to see at the Seder. Okay? Now, the Seder has basically 4 steps. And we have 4 cups of wine. That's why I guess it's also reminiscent of the Passover Seder, because we have 4 cups of wine. But the reasons why we have 4 cups of wine during the Tu Bishvat Seder is very different. Here, instead of remembering the four verbs of a redemption mentioned in the Torah during Passover, we are remembering the 4 spiritual worlds according to Kabbalah. Okay? 4 spiritual worlds according to Kabbalah. So, which are the 4 spiritual worlds? Let me show you. And we are going from the inside circle to the outside. Why? Because the more you go to the center of the circle, is the more you are connected to the material world. And the more you go into the outside of the circle, you're going into the purely spiritual world. And then you have things in between. Okay? Why do we have the things in between? And this is a very interesting thing. And this is something that I mentioned many times, and I don't know if I can explain properly, because it's a difficult concept to understand. You have to understand that God, our Creator, is an infinite being. We and our world is a finite thing. Right? So the question is, how can God, being infinite, coexist with a finite thing? It's impossible. You cannot have something that is infinite and finite at the same time or the same place, because the infinite does not have place or time, etc. So we have a problem there. Okay? Welcome, Roberto Franco. Welcome. So the Kabbalist will talk about layers of separation between us and God. So the way for an infinite to coexist with a finite is some in-between states. How are those in-between? We don't know, but it's something that allows the infinite to permeate into the finite and vice versa. Okay? So we talk in Kabbalah, and again, in Kabbalah, everything is symbolic. Everything is a metaphor. And then the Kabbalistic studies will help you to comprehend a little bit better these profound metaphors that sometimes they make no sense. Okay? But you can see there in this photo how you have like 4 worlds, one inside the other, right? And I like that it has like a white circle in between the worlds, so you can, it almost feels like a buffer or a separation in between them, something that could allow one to permeate into the next. So every fruit that we are going to eat represent one of these worlds. And the thing is, everything starts from Atzilut, which is the purely spiritual world, and it's a world of abundance, a world that with God is sending everything to us, right? But if there are impurities in the worlds as things come to us, then we don't receive this abundance on its purest form. It comes contaminated. It comes blocked. So through the Seder, we are going to unblock those channels so you can receive all the abundance flowing from God, from the world of Atzilut. Okay? It's like, try to imagine that you have a pipe, right, coming all the way from a cistern. And then you're at the other end of the pipe with a container receiving the water coming to you. And maybe the flow is a very weak flow. But you may say, okay, that's okay. You can put a container there, a bottle, a cup, a glass, and you receive that water. And that's okay. It will take longer, and then eventually you have your cup full and you can drink it, right? But the other thing you can do is to walk along that pipe and removing everything that is blocking the flow. So eventually you will have more water flowing from that cistern to you. And that's the original idea of this Seder of Tu Bishvat, to remove everything that blocks God from connecting to us, from giving us all the abundance from heaven. Because at the end of the day, as remember I told you, in Kabbalah, everything is a symbol. So the trees and the fruits are a symbol of God providing humanity. Is that clear? I hope it is. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Please let me know. So you can understand that this is a very profound thing. So we have these four worlds. Roberto Franco said, can we visualize Atzilut at the same state as the Gan Eden was? No, Atzilut it's at a different level of Gan Eden. Atzilut is something that is purely spiritual, and it's the closest thing that we have to imagining the divine. Okay, so let me show you a few things that we go through during the Seder. So here you have the four worlds that I mentioned before. Asiya, here. Asiya being the lowest, okay, lowest world. So Asiya, Yetzirah, Bria, and Atzilut, from lower to higher. So you have every world, and then the Seder will talk about an idea represented by that world, an element attached to that world, a season connected to that world, and what wine better represents that world, and what fruit is a symbol, symbolizes that world. Okay? So let's start with Asiya, that is the lowest one. It is the idea of action. And you have to understand that the action, the fact that we can do something is something that belongs to this world. Once you ascend to Atzilut, to the upper world, you cannot do anymore, because to do you need a body. It's a fact. To do you need a body. So being in this world, it also has its perks. Because once you leave this world, let's say you go to a purely spiritual world in the Olam Haba, in the world to come, then you may enjoy perfect bliss by being next to God, but you can never do anymore. This world is a world to do. The other world is a world to enjoy by not doing. But God sends us here so we have the chance to experience doing. Think about that as well. Okay, so Asiya, the idea is action. The element is earth. Okay, the season is winter. And the wine that the cup of wine that we use for that world is all white. Okay, you can Um, now, for the wine itself, there are different traditions. Some people, for the Asiya, will have all white with a little drop of red. Okay? And then if you keep going, they will use the white with the dash of red. In the second one will be with a little bit more red, and so forth. And then the Atzilut, they will have all red with a little bit of white anyway. So so you may see something different on that column, depends on the Seder you go. Now, let's go to the fruit. For Asiya, it has to be hard outside, soft inside. Why? Being the lowest world, it seems, unless you crack the shell, you cannot realize that there is something edible inside. The edible, what's the word that I'm looking for here? The edible quality is a higher one. Okay? It's a higher one. It belongs to world number 3, Bria, the edible quality. So, by cracking the shell, and you have access immediately, already, into something more elevated. The problem is, if you don't crack it, you cannot enjoy it, you cannot eat it. So as part of the tikkun, as part of the correction, remember when I was telling you about the whole Seder being a tikkun, a correction about removing impurities and removing blockages from this channel from God to us. The thing we do at the beginning of the Seder is we crack the hard outside and we eat the soft inside as we drink this cup of wine. Ruvain, welcome to the class. Shelly Chochinov. Cup 1 transition back and forth between level or all in one direction. During the Seder is only one direction. During our lives is a back and forth. It's a fact. Yeah. Even the greatest characters from the Bible, I will say that they had access to higher worlds and better understandings of God. They had a back and forth. Yeah. Ruven, good afternoon. How to catch this on the replay? Your frigid weather is on its way here. It's everywhere. But here, boy, you want to know, right now in Winnipeg is minus 40 Celsius. I'm pretty sure, I think Fahrenheit is the same at this point. It's so cold that there is no difference. Minus 40 is the wind chill. And we have colder weather a couple of days ago. Yeah, I had to do a funeral and everything, so I can tell you about that. But anyway, so let's go back here and let's move on to the second world, the Yetzirah, the formation. Okay, so now it's not just action, now it's action towards something. You are recreating forms into creating a new form, but with elements that already belong to you. Okay, the element will be water. The season now is spring, and the wine, it's the first mix. So you're going to do white with a little bit of red. Okay, like could be a dash. Some people will do 3/4 and 1/4, but it's more white than red. And now, as for the fruit, you're going to move to the next level, and you're going to eat something that is soft outside, but that is hard inside. You see, now you are, again, the interesting thing is, sometimes we see something that it seems to be ready to eat, but you have to be careful that it has an inedible part inside that you also have to remove before you eat it. So there are different levels of impurities at different levels of existence, and it's up to us to remove it. A perfect example of this fruit could be, for example, how you call it? Like let's say an olive, for example, right? That it's so delicious outside, but then it had the pit inside that you had to remove. Otherwise, it's bad for us. So we have to be careful. So this is a perfect example of the second world. And then you have Bria, that is creation, and it goes beyond formation. Now you are creating something. When we create, we are closer to God. who is our creator. The element is air, which is already more spiritual, because it's something that we feel but we don't touch. So it's like already in between worlds, you see. And the season is it's summer, and the wine is red with a little bit of white. So 3/4 red, 1/4 white. And the fruit is something that is all soft, that there is nothing to remove. You can eat it complete, just the way it is. And that seems to be the end of it. You find something that is so pure that there is nothing to remove, that you can eat it, right? But there is one more level, that is the Atzilut. Now, the thing with Atzilut, that even though we still mention it here, and I will show you how, we don't have access to this one. We can access to the other three worlds in our lives, but we cannot access the full extent of Atzilut in our lives. We do have to recognize that all the abundance of God generates there, and we still want to unblock the connection between Bria and Atzilut. And that's why it's part of our Seder. So the idea is spirit. You see, there is no doing. There is no creation, no formation, no action, because we are already in the world of the spirit, in the spiritual world of Atzilut. The element is fire, but fire in the sense that you can feel the heat, but you cannot touch it. You can feel it. You can enjoy it, but you cannot touch it. Okay? The season is fall. The wine is all red, although some people do add a drop of white as a reminder that we are still connecting to Atzilut, but from a finite perspective. Okay? And the fruit is no fruit. There is nothing that we eat when we connect with Atzilut. What do? Usually we smell something. We just smell it. Usually, and you will see, I don't know if we're going to have time to do it, but it's usually cedar or pine that has it had to be a wood from a tree that we use. But if you can get cedar, that's the best. Otherwise, people use pine. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing. So I want to present to you a few rabbinic insight to these 4 actions. So let me give you a few examples, for example, and how the walnuts, for example, is the most traditional to connect with Asiyah, the world of action or doing, as I explained before. Okay? Let me read now a midrash from the Song of Songs, Rabbah. Usually when you have these books with the Rabbah at the end, it means that there is a collection of midrashim about a biblical book. In this case, it's a collection of midrashim about the book of Songs of Songs. Which Songs of Songs, let me tell you, there was a debate among the rabbis if it should be canonized or not. Many rabbis said, have you read it? It's pornographic. It's talking about, explicit love between a man and a woman. How can we canonize such book? But other rabbis said, no, you're reading it all wrong. It's not a man. It's not a woman. This is a book that is telling us behind a veil the relationship between God and the people of Israel. So go and read it again and pay attention to those details. Okay? So let me show you. And that's why it's a book that it has to be understood from the point of view of the Midrash, from the point of view of metaphors, and so forth. Okay? For example, we eat walnuts to connect to the world of Asiyah, the world of action. Why? Well, Song of Songs. It says, I went down to the nut garden. So with the walnut, egoz in Hebrew, you take one from the pile and all of them scatter and roll. one after the other. So too with Israel. Strike one of them, and all of them feel it. You see how you can analyze this. So in this case, I represents God. I went down to the nut garden. Nut garden represents Israel. Why Israel? Well, imagine a pile of nuts, of walnuts, that before you crack them are like a circle, like a sphere. Take one, they all fall. Because, the action to one generates a reaction from the other, right? So this is the way, and I'm putting here for you the complete verse 11 from Song of Songs, so you can put it in the right context. It says, I went down to the nut garden to see the budding of the veil, to see if the vines had blossomed, if the pomegranates were in bloom. Now, what you have to understand here is Song of Songs is talking about different plants and trees to see if they are giving fruits. What does it mean that God came down to see if the trees are giving fruits? Well, we have to understand where we are coming from and why we say also that the whole Tu Bishvat Seder is a tikkun, is a correction that involves ourselves. Remember that the first person created in the Bible was Adam. What is the word Adam coming from? Well, it comes from Adamah, which means earth. So, Adam, the first man, on earth are in the world of Kabbalah the same. So, the same way that earth gives fruits, Adam gives fruits. So when we talk about the trees of the earth, we are talking about ourselves as a ground that should facilitate the giving of fruits. So consider yourself a fertile ground. Are you giving fruits? God is coming down to see if we are giving fruits or we are cutting the ability of giving fruits. So one of the things that we should consider during the Seder of Tu Bishvat is, are we developing our full potential, and are we giving fruits the way we should? The same way that the farmer will check the ground to see if something wrong, because if the crops are not good, it means that nutrients may be missing. Maybe it's a problem that it was not nurtured properly. So we are the same. For Tu Bishvat, we put the two together, and by connecting to fruits, we're connecting to our own fruits. So that is the way that we start the Seder. Then we continue with something, remember, that it has a pit, but you can eat the outside, and I mentioned, for example, the olives. And the olives connect to the wall of Yetzirah, which is the formation or making something. So the rabbis point out, for example, to the book of Genesis, when the olive tree is mentioned. When? After the flood. And it says, remember when after the flood, Noah sent a crow and a dove to see if the waters went down, because he was inside the ark without windows. So he sent birds to see what they will bring back. So Noah sent the dove, and then I will read what Genesis says. But the dove could not find a resting place for its foot, and returned to him to the ark, for there was water all over the earth. So putting out his hand, he took it into the ark with him, right? But you will see that eventually that dove brought an olive branch. But it still means that it came back with the olive branch because he could pick it up, but it still wasn't strong enough there was no land to rest. So he had to come back to the ark, but the dove brought back this olive branch. So, Genesis Rabbah, remember? Said it before, when you had the Rabbah, this is a midrash, okay? A collection of midrashim. From where did she bring it? The dove. From where did it bring the olive branch? Rabbi Bibi said the gates of the Garden of Eden were open for her. But Rabbi Abahu said, if she came from the Garden of Eden, wouldn't she bring something special like cinnamon or balsam? Why just an olive branch, right? If you're, think about yourself. If you have the opportunity to be at the Garden of Eden for a second and bring something from there, you're going to bring an olive branch? Pick something better. That's what Rabbi Abahu said. But the dove, actually hinted to Noah. So basically, God sent the dove with an olive branch coming from the Garden of Eden, saying, better is bitterness from this and not sweetness from beneath your hand. In other words, when something is coming from God, right, and you feel that it's difficult, and you still have to remove the pit, and you have all this difficult, why wouldn't bring something that was ready to eat, right, instead of the symbol of the olive? Because it says, if it's coming from God, even if it appears to be hard, it's better of something that you think is good, but you made it yourself. And that's what happened many times in life. When we get dizzy by flashy things that we think they are so great, and then we realize that they are not. Hopefully, not when it's too late, but sometimes it is. When we get disappointed at material things that we make, because we believe that sometimes living a spiritual life is so difficult. Well, what it's saying is the difficulties of spiritual life are way better than the disappointment that you get when you put too much trust on material things. That's what it is. Okay? I think it's this is something that we learn by connecting with the world of Yetzirah through the olive. Then we have the next one. Remember, we are ascending here. We are ascending. Then we have the world of Briah, creation, and we eat figs that they could be completely eaten. There is nothing you have to discard. You can eat the interior, you can eat the soft peel. Everything is edible. And that is a higher level, right? And about this, I want to present to you with a text from the Talmud, where Rabbi Yochanan said, why is it written about wisdom? The one who guards a fig tree will eat its fruit. So now the Talmud realizes that there is a source in the book of Proverbs connecting the fig tree with wisdom. Okay? Great opportunity to create a midrash here, to create a teaching. In what way are words of Torah compared to a fig? With a fig tree, whenever one searches her, one finds ripe figs in her because they don't ripen at once, but some each day. So too with words of Torah. Whenever a person meditates upon them, he finds new meanings, or ta'am in Hebrew, or taste on it. Okay? It's the way we study Torah, a little bit every day. And it says the same way that the fig tree gives fruits, a little bit every day. So if the figs are connecting to Torah, Torah is already a higher level than the other two. Torah is the closest thing we have to God. So it's perfect to make the connection when we ascend to world number 3. And then eventually you have the Atzilut, the word of spirit. And what we have, the symbol is cedars, and we don't need it, as I mentioned before. Okay? So why? Because Rabbi Yochanan said the world was not worthy to make use of the cedars, for they were created only for the needs of the temple that makes all holy. So, in other words, Genesis Rabbi is saying here that cedar was created specifically to be used for holy purposes, like the building of the temple. Okay? So yeah, you can use it for the rest of the world, but you see, you're not worthy of using it because it's a holy tree, cedar. Okay? And where else the Torah mentioned that someone used cedars for something holy? Next text, for 120 years Noah planted cedars and cut them down in order to build the ark without cutting down any existing trees. So cedars were used to build Noah's ark because it was also a holy vessel to save these righteous people. Yeah, there are many times that we think, why did Noah have to wait 120 years from the time that God said, I'm going to send the flood, until the time that the flood came? One explanation is because Noah planted enough cedars to have enough wood to build the ark, and cedars to reach that point takes many years, like 120, to have enough wood, right? So I'm reading at the bottom of the page right here. Atzilut is not symbolized by fruit, but by things that represents God's presence all around us. Okay? This can include smelling something natural like cedar, pine, or spices like the way we use for Havdalah. Okay? Because sometimes smelling is the closest thing that we have to the spiritual world. Something that makes an effect on us, but we cannot touch it. It's the highest. Actually, the rabbis will say that it's the highest of the five senses, the sense of smell. Now, forget about the Seder for a second, and why do we have to Bishvat? And this is going to be the last thing for today's class, right? Why do we have to Bishvat? What's so special about the 15th day of the month of Shevat that the Kabbalists decided that would be the time to connect with the fruits and the trees, etc.? Well, it's coming from the Torah. Okay? How so? The Torah in the book of Leviticus says, when you enter the land and plant various kinds of fruit trees, you are to regard its fruits as forbidden. How long? For 3 years. It will be forbidden to you and not eaten. In the 4th year, all its fruit will be holy for praising Hashem. So, you plant a tree, you wait 3 years, that you have your first fruits, right? For the first 3 years, that's forbidden. The 4th year is not forbidden, but you still cannot eat it. Those fruits have to be taken to the temple and present them as an offering to God. Only in the 5th year, you might eat its fruit, so that it will produce even more for you. I am Hashem, your God. Okay? So the Torah here details regulation associated with fruit trees. Any fruit that grows on a tree during the first 3 years after it has been planted is called orla, and is forbidden for consumption. Now the question is, how do you calculate the 3 or the 4 years? Based on what? Well, not so easy. It's from the time you plant, from the time of the first blossoming. To avoid any confusions, the rabbis regulated this in the Talmud. And they said as follows. They said in Mishnah, in Rosh Hashanah, it says there are 4 new years. Okay? 4 new years. On the first of the month of Nisan is the new year for kings and for festivals. By the way, Nisan is the month of Passover. And the Torah says, when just before the Israelites left Egypt, it says, today is going to be the beginning of the month for you. And that was the month of Nisan. Okay? That's what it is. So in other words, all the festivals are to be calculated from the time that we started to create the calendar. So it's from the 1st of Nisan. But the kings of Israel, we calculated how many years they were in the throne based on how many 1st of Nisan they passed during their life as kings. So if the king of Israel was crowned 1 month before Nisan, right? That 1st of Nisan became year 1 of the throne. Even though I said, well, but it's only 1 month. Doesn't matter. That will be the first year of that king. And then the second time that king goes through the 1st of Nisan will be year 2, even though technically it's only an year and a month. But that's the way it's calculated, okay? Now, that is the first new year that we have. The second new year we have is on the 1st of the month of Elul. And that is the new year for the tithe of cattle. Okay? So if you have to calculate how old your cattle is, they all celebrate their birthdays, the cattle, on the first day of the month of Elul. Okay? And that's the way you calculated their age for tithing. Now, let's continue. Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, however, placed this on the 1st of Tishrei, which is the month after Elul. There was a dissension there. That's what it means. Now, the third new year is the 1st of Tishrei. This is the one that we know because it's the Rosh Hashanah. Okay? So, and the Mishnah said, this is the new year for years. That means that is the 1st of Tishrei is the moment where you get a new calendar. It's a new year. Now we are 5783. Next time we go through a 1st of Tishrei will be 5784 and so forth. Okay? So it says 1st of Tishrei is new year for the years, for sabbaticals and the jubilee years, for planting and for tithe of vegetables. Now, the next one is the 1st of Shevat, which was the new year for the tree, according to the ruling of Beit Shammai. But Beit Hillel, however, placed it on the 15th of that month, of the 15th of Shevat, and that's exactly what we practice today. We follow the tradition of Hillel, and we celebrate the new year of the trees on the 15th of Shevat, which is Tu Bishvat. So now let's read what the Talmud, the Gemara says about that Mishnah. Before the 15th of Shevat, right, is tithe for the outgoing year. If after the 15th of Shevat, is tithe for the incoming year. So in other words, let's say that you planted a tree, right, and you're counting years. If it blossoms before Tu Bishvat, it belongs to that year. Otherwise, you have to wait 1 more year to count the 3rd, 4th years, etc. And that's how we have such an important date on Tu Bishvat. And from there, we have the Tu Bishvat Seder, etc. And this is very important because even if you're outside of the land of Israel, if you plant a tree here in Winnipeg, you're not allowed to eat the fruits for 4 years in a row. Even though we don't have temples, or in the 4th year, you cannot bring them as offerings. You still cannot eat them until year number 5. And that is also calculated following the calendar of Tu Bishvat. So it has some implications. And again, if you're planting trees at home in the backyard, or you buy a house and it has a tree already, like an apple tree or whatever, technically, halachically, according to Jewish law, you should find out how old that tree is, because you're not allowed to eat those fruits until year number 5. Okay? So, this is all what I wanted to talk to you today about Tu Bishvat. If you missed this class today, and I know it was a problem with where the stream went, if you missed it, don't worry. This class is going to be rebroadcasted tonight at 8 p.m. Central Time. Okay? So you have another opportunity to play from the beginning. If you cannot wait until 8, if you're good searching on YouTube, it will still be there on our YouTube channel. It's called SZ Winnipeg, or on our Facebook page. You can find it there, play it from the beginning. And if you're celebrating the Seder of Tu Bishvat on Sunday evening, hopefully this was an interesting insight for you, so you will have a better understanding what you're doing. And if you are coming to our celebration with Shaare Zedek, Temple Shalom, and JNF at the Garden of Contemplation of the Museum of Human Rights, you also have a little bit more information to enjoy it even more. And you understand what's going on in Tu Bishvat. So thank you everyone for tuning in this afternoon. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Please stay safe. Hope to see you soon. Bye everyone, and please don't remember to give us a like and subscribe to our channels. Bye everyone.